It's slightly delayed. Apparently, there's been an incident or accident on the motorway, and some members have been delayed by a few minutes, but they will be here. Right, we'll make a start then, because the other member is not due to arrive just yet. Health and safety announcement. There is no fire alarm and drill anticipated today. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the running man signs above the doors. Make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will say when it's safe to return. Toilets are available in the stairwell of the building. Water is available from the water cooler in reception. And finally, please make sure all phones are either switched off or muted. Good morning, I'm the Chair, Councillor Eileen Wragg, and welcome to this Planning Committee meeting on Friday, 10th of July 2026. Sitting to my right is Vice Chair, Councillor Steve Hunt. The supporting officers present today are Wendy Ormsby, Development Manager, Damien Hunter, Planning Solicitor, and Wendy Harris, Democratic Services Officer. The presenting officers for the applications today will be New Communities Manager James Brown on the end, Senior Planning Officer Jamie Quinton, and Development Manager on my left, Wendy Ormsby. Also in attendance is the Economic Development Manager, Tom Winter, sitting over there on the bench, who will be able to answer any questions members may have relating to the first application, 250965, Major Fall, The Grange in Rockbere. This meeting today is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube account. Can I remind all members and officers contributing to the meeting to use a microphone or your comments will not be heard. We'll now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members and declarations of interest. Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with yourself, Councillor Wragg.
Yeah, present and declaration of interest for agenda item 9252614 full. Duncaswell and Otterhead. I've been lobbied on that one, not on the others. that I recall. Okay. And I think I speak on behalf of most members of the committee, been lobbied on that one? The Stockland one? No? Oh.
Oh,
Okay,
just you then.
thank you.
Oh, you got it. Okay, so I'll wait till I come round to you. Okay, so Vice Chair, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I'm present and I've had the same email. Nothing to declare though.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Present and nothing to declare that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Present and nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Present, and I had the same email as the chair.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
Present and nothing to declare, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Present, Wendy, nothing to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
President Wendy, and I would like to commend myself and the other members of the committee of my vintage who defied medical advice to stay at home and cuddle a cold water bottle, and we turned up for the meeting. I would like to declare that I'm the ward member for Dunkeswell and Otterhead, so I have been lobbied on number 9.
Thank you. Can I ask non-committee members if they have any declarations? No? No.
I've no declarations, but I've been lobbied on 9.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, agenda item 1, registered speakers. The speakers for today's planning applications can be found on page 4. Agenda item 2, apologies. Wendy?
Yes, we've had a few apologies. Councillor Brian Bailey, Councillor Sarah Chamberlain, Councillor Steve Gazzard, Councillor Bethany Collins, Councillor Simon Smith and Councillor Mike Howe.
Thank you, Wendy. And gather Councillor Brown is on his way. Agenda item 3 has been done. 4, matters of urgency, there are none. Item 5, to agree items to be dealt with after the public have been excluded, there are none. Item 6, first planning application 250965. It's a major fall for the Grange, London Road, Rockbeer, pages 5 to 87. And the new communities manager, James Brown, to present the report. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So this application is for the construction of 21 light industrial units spread over 7 buildings around a courtyard, sort of set of courtyard formations. It is located on land to the south of Cranbrook, south of London Road, sits in Rockbeer Parish and to the east of the village. Just for a little bit of early context, and then we can go into it in more detail in a moment, it also sits adjacent to the adopted and allocated land for Cranbrook expansion, particularly in relation to the Grange area, which sits to its immediate east. The scheme, as I've already said, is 21 units. On screen now is the plan showing its layout, two courtyard and one east-west main access for the northern units. It includes a pond basin area to its south and access to the open space that already sits within the site, and on lower slopes again further to its south. The floor plan and design of the units includes the provision for a potential mezzanine as an optional feature within them, and car parking and access as standard for these units. Materials are proposed to be a brick plinth with green sheet cladding on elevations and roof. In addition, it also includes PV panels and roof lights within the design of the building. The scheme is accessed along the Grange Lane, which is taken off the London Road. It's a long linear lane, and as part of the scheme, they're proposing to include additional passing places on that lane to accommodate movement of traffic along there, and a slightly modified access off the London Road, including a lengthened right-hand turn lane to provide for vehicle turning. The scheme includes the retention of existing tree planting that's on the periphery of the site in the short term, and in the meantime, to allow additional tree planting to grow up and help to set the scheme within its context. And there follows some photographs of the site. This one looks north along the access lane, and it will be into that passing places would then be put into the verge at appropriate locations to accommodate the existing trees. There would also be existing tree planting along this lane to help re-establish the line of limes, which was formerly a key feature of it. View looking south into the site. In fact, just to point out on that, the line of conifers there are the ones that will be retained in the short to medium term, with the buildings being set in behind. And then photographs internal to the site, followed by a more distant one. And the orange text there doesn't come out particularly well on the screen, but the line of conifers that's in the foreground are the ones to be retained. You've then got a line of conifers that sit to the rear, so it's those ones in. I've got a. Sorry, I'm looking for a pointer here. Aha, thank you. That will work better. The line of conifers that just poke out above that lower line are the ones that will be removed from the site to accommodate the built form. Some aerial photographs just again show the context in relation to Cranbrook and the peripheral trees that would be retained around the site. Move on from that one. And then I promised to come back to the local plan and policy context, and it's where we'll be picking up in terms of the key issues. The site sits in the green wedge that is around Rockbere, and this shot or set of plans clearly illustrates its relationship to that green wedge and to the neighbourhood plan policies that are adopted within the Rockbere Maid neighbourhood plan. In addition, for policy context, this plan also puts a bit more detail in terms of the relationship with the Cranbrook plan. It's showing it adjacent to the allocated areas of the Grange and Cobdens, and in particular it also shows in relation to the scheme on Gribble Lane under reference 1917-98, which has a resolution to approve from this committee subject to section 106, which is currently in progress, and that establishes the southern extent of built form on that adjacent land. The report sets out in detail the key issues that are relevant to the application, but I think it's worth just teasing out a few of those before I close this presentation. And that's to recognise that this application is a departure. It is contrary to the existing policies in the adopted local plan. It is proposed development in the Green Wedge, and as such is contrary to policies in the Made Rockbeer neighbourhood plan. However, it does provide employment land on previously developed land, a form of employment for which the council is in need of and for which there is recognised local demand, and therefore there are significant economic benefits that come with it. Coupled with that, and recognising the importance and purpose of the Green Wedge is to prevent settlement coalescence, the distance between the site and Rockbeer is notable, coupled with the limited landscape harm that would arise because of both the retained conifer trees, but also the additional landscaping planting that is proposed as part of the scheme. There are other elements to balance, not least the slight impact on Grange Hotel as a non-designated heritage asset, which is less than severe and identified as slight by our conservation officers, and the amenity impact upon residents at Grange Lodge, which would have the additional passing vehicle and movement of traffic along the lane where it sits adjacent to the lane and London Road. However, having looked at all those elements very carefully, officers' recommendations is to approve, subject to a Section 106 agreement for BNG maintenance, the highway works that I mentioned in terms of the right-hand turn lane, and the monitoring and maintenance, monitoring of that Section 106 agreement. And I think it's worth just to clarify on page 41 of your agenda that recommendation does include those Section 106 components. It currently is slightly loose in terms of just suggesting 106 without actually specifying what those requirements would be. The balance elements are on screen there, but officer's recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of my client on this exciting project. I'd like to start by thanking the case officer for his comprehensive and balanced report and for his positive approach to the determination of the application. In accordance with Section 38(6) of the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act, proposed development has to be assessed against the development plan, which includes the Rockbeer Neighbourhood Plan, together with any material considerations. These will be discussed later in this presentation. The report does recognise that there will be some harms as a result of the proposal: development outside the built-up area boundary, development in a green wedge, and some transportation harms, but these can be mitigated. However, there are strong material considerations and significant benefits to the proposed development which cannot be understated. Provision of 21 employment units close to the expanding settlement of Cranbrook at a time when housing growth has far outstripped employment land provision, to the point where new business provision is at a critical stage, and effectively the tilted balance in favour of employment land and premises is triggered. The recent appeal decision at Hillbarton Business Park recognised this critical situation that the council are in, with the new local plan allocating more land, but the lag to provision is crippling the employment land supply. The effective reuse of previously developed land as part of the site was used as a plant nursery and car park for the adjacent hotel and airport car parking, and this is advocated by Section 11 of the NPPF. The Economic Development Team recognised the benefits, with the units being in high demand and short supply. Links to the approved housing land and recreational space in the proposed Cliffs Valley Regional Park extension are proposed. The restoration of the Lime Avenue resulting in overall arboricultural and landscape betterment. No unacceptable impacts on highway safety as recognised by Devon County Highways and Highways England, providing the off-site highway works are secured by legal agreement. Mitigation of the absence of public and active transport solutions through resurfacing and passing places and pedestrian and cycle connections to the adjacent parcel of land and future development in the Grange expansion area. No technical objections to sustainability and climate change, land contamination and flood risk have been received. In relation to ecology, BNG can be secured by conditions and legal agreements, and Natural England have raised no concerns. There's clearly therefore a balance to be undertaken by the decision maker, and no one but the decision maker can make that balance. However, as you've heard in this speech and have written before you in the officer report, the proposed benefits of the development would significantly outweigh the harm, with no fundamental concerns being raised by statutory and non-statutory consultees that cannot be mitigated by the imposition of conditions in a legal agreement. I therefore recommend to you members that this application should be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And my microphone wasn't switched on. That was Gavin Spiller, agent for the applicant. Ward member now, Councillor Todd Olive.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I'm making a rare appearance before you this morning to ask you, please, to reject this application for 21 light industrial units in the Green Wedge between Rockbere and Cranbrook. There are three reasons why my position differs from that set out in the officer report. These relate to the reuse of previously developed land, the suitability of access to the site, and the location of the proposal in the Green Wedge and the emerging Clyst Valley Regional Park designation. Firstly, the report identifies, and as you've just heard from the agent in support of that position, the proposal being cited on previously developed land as a significant element of mitigation for development in the Green Wedge and the open countryside. And I will accept that there is a small existing building on a small part of the site. However, as you've seen in the photographs that James has kindly displayed for us this morning, the vast majority of the site is today scrubland, vegetation, trees, hedging. It may have been in use as development 2 decades ago, but it is now functionally, definitively part of the open countryside, as you've seen, and it has been for many years. The definition of previously developed land in Annex 2 of the 2024 NPPF, which is cited in the officer report, includes a very clear exception for, and I quote, land that was previously developed but where the remains of the permanent structure or fixed surface structure have blended into the landscape. In my view, and I leave it to your judgment as to whether or not you agree with me, the vast majority of the site, as we have seen, falls within that exception, and thus the definition of previously developed land and resulting policy support from the NPPF should not be engaged. That is significant in judging the balance here. Secondly, the access to the site. It is patently unacceptable for an industrial estate. I genuinely cannot for the life of me understand why either we or the Highways Authority are saying that the very limited improvements proposed are in any way mitigation of this point. The site is accessed via what is little more than a narrow country lane, adequate to serve the occasional private vehicle accessing one of the dwellings that sit off it, or the small and lightly trafficked hotel at the end of it. Fine, sure. But for 21 industrial units, with the larger vehicles and significantly greater number of trips implied, the transport assessment suggests 41 vehicles in the morning and 26 in the afternoon at peak for 21 units. I'd respectfully dispute those figures. The officer report itself cites between 40 and 52 full-time jobs as the economic benefit that would arise from these proposals. One movement each in the morning and one in the afternoon at least, given that the sorts of businesses on this site are not going to lend themselves to working from home, and that already equals or outpaces the figures that the transport assessment cites. You then have deliveries by up to and including HGVs along a narrow country lane, not to mention potential actual customers for the businesses that are going to be here. I'm not saying there are going to be hundreds of movements a day here, and I'm not making a safety argument either. My point here is that the access to this site is fundamentally unsuitable for a development of this type and scale. A couple of passing places and a slightly wider entrance off the main road do not mitigate that point. Lastly, then, to location in the Green Wedge. As things stand, with the built environment today, the proposal quite clearly adds to current sporadic or isolated development in the Green Wedge, which is a material departure from Strategy 8 and emerging policy OL05 in absolute terms, not as mediated by an encroachment test, as the report suggests. Accepting that the proposal would not be so isolated once the Grange expansion area is built out, that eventuality nevertheless introduces further contradiction with those Green Wedge policies. It would represent a significant encroachment of the ultimate planned extent of Cranbrook in the Grange expansion area towards Rockbeer Village from the east this time, rather than from the north with Cranbrook itself. Rockbeer's Green Wedge has already been compromised significantly by encroachment of that West Grange planning application, both outside of its designated edge in policy terms and by virtue of its position. If we put any stock at all in Strategy 8 or Policy OL05, we should give this issue really very significant weight, in my view. Coming then to the balance to conclude, Chair, can I remind members that while we may be in need of employment land of this type, I'm quite happy to accept the case for that, there is nevertheless no equivalent of the tilted balance test here for employment sites. You're weighing up material considerations under the point in legislation that the agent has just cited. I accept, as I say, there is a need for units of this type and that there is a positive case for this application, but in my view, the issues with the location of the site alone are sufficient in my view, correct absence of the previously developed land point. I think those 2 points are sufficient, respectfully, members, to tip the balance against this application, and I look forward to hearing what you think on the matter. Thank you for consideration, members, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Olive. We have the Economic Development Manager, Tom Winter, to answer questions from members. So over to you. Did you want to say anything to start with, Tom?
I'd be happy to answer any questions that members have. I don't have a statement as such.
Okay, thank you. Members, questions? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the road, the access road, I have concerns about that. Is 2 passing places really enough? I know it said they were around 200 metres apart, which was the recommended distance. But for the amount of traffic and the type of traffic, is that really enough? I'd also like to know when the Grange expansion area is actually due to be built out. And also, it mentions solar panels in the report. It doesn't say how many there would be on each unit. I note the requirement to join to the district heating network, and it seemed to me that actually solar panels combined with a battery system and a heating system would be a far more efficient way of doing it, particularly since these would be occupied during the day when solar panels were more likely to be producing electricity. So I'd like to know how many solar panels, when the Grange is due to be built out, and really is 2 passing places enough in terms of usual requirements?
Thank you. James?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. So in terms of the passing places, I think there's more than 2 proposed. You're quite right that they're about 180, 190 metres apart. But looking at the plans, because of the length of the lane, I think you've got sort of 2 that are opposite each other, close to the beginning of the lane, 1 in the middle, and then 1 close to where it then sort of spurs into the main development itself. They've been set there because of the good intervisibility. I'll start again. Good intervisibility between them because it's a straight lane, but also because of the level of projected traffic along there. The slight constraint about adding additional ones in is the need for tree planting and and the recognition of existing trees and the constraints that they form, I think it would certainly be possible to liaise with the applicant to understand whether more could be provided if necessary. But that's something that we would have to take away. In terms of the solar panels, I don't know the number, but we can try and have a look at the plans. I'll answer the Grange question first, and perhaps come back to the solar panels one in a moment, if I may. And that is that we have resolutions to approve development across the whole of the Grange expansion area. So that's both the Gribble Lane West site that sits immediately abutting this access lane, but also the remainder of the Grange site, which sits to the east of Gribble Lane. Those resolutions were made some time ago, and the Section 106 agreements for both those sites are now very well progressed. So therefore, there is no likelihood or no expectation that those Section 106 agreements would not be signed and the outline consents drawn down. I think at the moment, developers for those sites would like to be making a commencement at the back end of 27 and first homes by 28, but that is a very caveated position in terms of we don't actually know when those 6 agreements are going to be signed and when they're going to make a start. That's just the expectation at this point in time. But I think there is good confidence that those sites will be brought to fruition in the fairly near future.
Do you have anything to add, James?
Yes, I was just conferring with. I was just looking at solar panel numbers. I think the easy way to answer that question is so that if that was a concern to members, we could always, by condition, seek clarification and details on that if members were minded to approve the application.
Thank you. Okay, Yehudi, Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Tuesday, we considered an application for the football field. And the officers objected to the increase in traffic, not a very large increase. Here we've got 40 to 52 full-time jobs, which will generate a very high volume of traffic, much higher than the football field. So what I find is difficult to understand, why do we object to the football field, or why don't we object to the increased volume of traffic here, which is I'm not talking about the industrial traffic, I'm talking about the private traffic. And my question really is, have we got a strategy or policy that we try to reduce road traffic by opposing applications where a small number of vehicles are involved, and we allow increase in road traffic when a large number of vehicles are involved? What is our policy about increasing traffic? Thank you.
That's a Devon County Council highways issue, really. And I think the two applications are quite different. The other one you referred to, the football pitches, was in National Landscape area.
But here we've got a green wedge, and if it's Devon County Council, it's our officers that are objecting to it, not Devon County Council.
Just with regard to the comment about the application we considered at Honiton, the officers recommended refusal of that application on one ground only,
yes.
which was not to do with traffic numbers or increase in cars. It was noted that the development itself would be reliant on cars, but it was not recommended by officers as a reason for refusal and was not the reason for refusing the application. So it's quite a different situation. And in terms generally about policies on traffic, so yes, we have clear policies that development should be located in sustainable locations, with where there's potential for alternative access other than the private car. And I think the key issue with this site, I mean, as it stands, when you look at it, it looks to be quite an isolated site. But I think the reason that Mr. Brown showed you the very large expansion area is to indicate that it will be immediately adjacent to a very large settlement. So there will be potential for people that may be living nearby to walk or to cycle to the site. And also once you get up to the London Road, which is a walkable distance, there are bus routes. So this is actually, although it doesn't necessarily appear so when you look at it as it stands, but knowing what's coming forward, this is actually deemed to be a sustainable location where employees, etc., would have the potential to travel by means other than the car. But obviously, the actual business traffic that will be generated does need to be taken into account. But that would arise from any business development anywhere. And this one, as I said, based on the London Road, the main routes, it's coming off quite an accessible, well-trafficked arterial route with just that diversion down to the south, and with that very clear straight line layout of the road, it does give that forward visibility, and with those passing places for people to be able to see and pull in to let each other pass, and hence the fact that there's no objection from the Highway Authority on this scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, I presume it's a private road, isn't it, off the thing? It's not a highway, main highway, so it's a private road.
Yeah.
And again, it's not far at all from houses that are already there. So, I mean, I've just measured it 400 metres. Even I would walk 400 metres, you know, and especially that's before the ones that are built right next door to it. So I would have said that. Question really is to the officer here from employment. Are there any other small units available nearby? I know that you can go to Exeter Airport where there's massive units there and all the rest of it, but this seems, you know, the sort of thing where small businesses start up. Is there anything else similar around that is as close to Cranbrook as this one?
Mr. Winters.
Yes, thank you. So, well, the short answer is no, I would say. So, I was actually looking at Cranbrook's own economic development strategy yesterday in preparation for today. There's a really interesting concept in there called the business ladder, which basically says that for Cranbrook, our ambition is that there, or not just Cranbrook, but around it as well, there are unit sizes of each different type to accommodate businesses at different stages of growth. And of course, a ladder is only as good as each of its steps. I would say that that first step is missing. The next step above it, you could say there are currently units at Sky Park. Most of them are about double the size of what we'd see here with the units, and they're at a much higher spec. I would not expect a startup business to move in there straight away. I know that because we've given grant funding to businesses who have grown into those units, which is really good to see. So that is certainly something I would speak to. And of course, you know, as we've discussed, there is currently some employment, or very limited there at the minute with the existing unit and the hard standing there as well. So to see that being redeveloped for more productive uses, again, it speaks to our own economic development strategy too. And lastly, quickly, if I may, I hope members have had an opportunity to see the industrial market briefing that our team produces now on a quarterly basis. It gives there a very good indication of what supply and demand is doing. In terms of supply, it's very much bigger units in our more rural areas that are struggling to shift. Where we see demand is very much for those small startup units, not just here and around Cranbrook, but across the whole district, and quite exhausted businesses which are looking to go potentially more further away. As we've been discussing, as there's more housing development in this area, we'd hope that, again, this development would soak up demand from businesses locally. I hope that's useful.
Thank you. Ian.
Just come back, and can you just tell us how far is Sky Park compared to this to Cranbrook?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm looking at James. He might have Google Maps open, but again, it's on the other side of the town, but I couldn't speak in terms of mileage. Sorry.
Yeah, no. James, you You're looking it up. While you're looking it up, councillor Heath.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to know what the existing floor space of the current storage unit is, because 2,100 metres squared of floor space will take up a considerable amount of land. And, you know, how much extra space will be utilised? Because this will be quite prominent, I would say, in the locality. Thanks.
Thank you. Who's going to answer that? James?
Just in answer to the question on distance, you're about 3 to 3.5 kilometres between this site and Sky Park, as a very crude measurement. The second question was about floor space, and I partly missed it because I was trying to check.
So the existing storage space on site, how big is it compared to what's now being proposed?
The current site is not actively used for storage. It comprises of a redundant building and hard standing, some of which has now sort of been overgrown. So I'm not sure there's an easy answer to how much storage would be lost as a result of this, unless I've misunderstood the question. If I have, I apologise.
It says in the explanation that it was a storage facility, but is that storage facility redundant?
That storage facility, as I understand it, no longer operates there.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yehudi?
Could I ask a simple thing? There are going to be about 40 to 52 jobs created. Is your expectation that the jobs will be taken up by local people? Are they going to be the salary of the pay going to be enough for people to live locally and work in the industrial estate? I mean, or are you going to suck in people from other parts of East Devon to work there?
Well, obviously, it ultimately depends on the occupant, but in terms of industrial uses, we typically see higher wages for those uses compared to things like retail, hospitality, etc. But no, it's an interesting point because obviously the demographics of the town are particularly relevant here. I think of all the different parts of East Devon, I think it has the largest proportion of younger people will obviously be coming up to that age where they'll be looking to work. So yes, my hope very much is that it will, again, soak up some of that demand which is there for employment. And I do speak to my colleagues at Devon County Council who lead on employment and skills, and they tell me that there is still demand for jobs in the town, and that's only continued to increase as people are growing up, being born there, growing up, and looking to move into the labour market. So yeah, that's very much my hope.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? No more questions, then we move into debate. Who'd like to start? Kim?
I'll start if I may, and I have made a number of notes here because I have got a number of concerns. I'm finding it quite difficult to rationalise this recommendation to approve because the content of the officer report sets out all the reasons why this application should be refused. To say that the development significantly outweighs the harm is a pretty large leap of faith in my view, because we're being asked to recommend to approve an application when it's outside the built-up area boundary of any settlement, it's located within a designated green wedge, it's within the expanded Clist Valley Regional Park, it's not supported from any adopted local or neighbourhood plan policy, and it's directly contrary to strategic policy SP06 of the emerging local plan. So I'm querying what's the purpose of a planning policy when I read that. The economic development team, I understand, support this and given significant weight in the planning balance. But, and I would say just a short distance along the London Road to Sky Park, and I live in Cranbrook, and I can walk to Sky Park with less than 10 minutes. So it isn't that far away to walk to Sky Park. There are still a number of units there that have been marketed, but are still slow progress to be occupied, I believe. And also on the Western Road opposite Sky Park, there's land there for units. Tom talked about the first step on the business ladder that Cranbrook is missing. Yes, they've been waiting for that for a number of years. And in the meantime, the majority of those people that want that first step have set up and changed their homes to accommodate. So I'm really concerned whether these units would actually be occupied by local people. There may be some jobs, but I am concerned about that. The report indicates the development would result in less than substantial harm to the setting and significance of the Grange Hotel. So is harm to this important site acceptable, provided that officers feel that it's less than substantial? What does less than substantial mean in this context? Given that I challenged the view of the economic team about the need and demand, I question whether it's less than substantial to support this. Highways, we always discuss highways that they never give any objections. I can see James smiling because I think he can anticipate that I'm going to say that local members, town council are consistently concerned about London Road, the B3174, and this I think will only add to those concerns to say whether it's acceptable and the access is safe and suitable. I don't believe it is. Mrs. Ormsby mentioned the bus route. The bus route is very limited along that road. It's probably 1 hour if you're lucky. It's a dangerous road. I met with some residents there recently who are struggling to cross the road. But I do see the difficulty that the committee's placed by lack of adverse highway comment. The report also talks about the trees and that the EDDC have no objection, but I don't see that as correct. I understand their comments include concerns that the access widening and passing places affect protected trees. They also state in the comments that the tree survey and tree constraints plan require revision to clearly identify trees to be felled and replaced, particularly damaged lime trees along the driveway, together with the detailed proposals for long-term tree protection, replacement planted, establishment and maintenance. So, as you can see, I've raised a number of concerns to support this. I'm struggling at the moment to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's interesting. Right, anybody else? Councillor Davey.
Yeah, following on from what Councillor Bloxham's saying, I mean, when I first looked at it, I thought, well, this is miles from anywhere. Why are we putting an industrial estate out here? So, okay, at some point in the future, some housing is going to be built nearby. Are those people really going to end up working in those light industrial units? It seems to me there's a lot of wishful thinking here. I would love to think that people will walk and cycle to this site eventually, but I have a horrible suspicion that in reality everybody will drive. It is manifestly in the Green Wedge. There's just no two ways about it, and it's not a particularly large green wedge from the look of the plans. And I know there's been massive concern in Rockbere about gradually being swallowed up by Cranbrook. And it is introducing built form into the Green Wedge. You just can't get away from that. The road, to me, looks pretty inadequate. I know, yeah, I've had another look, James, you're right. There are a couple more passing places. And when I looked at it, I thought, no, it says there's an existing building on here, and I couldn't see it in any of the photographs. I think I have now found it. I was just able to spot it just behind a hedge. But really, and I'm grateful to Todd for kind of mentioning this, it's been integrated back into the countryside. 9 species of bats use this. Can we really offset that and provide habitat that will really, achieve the biodiversity net gain that it looks as though it will on paper? I mean, I'm always a little skeptical about that, but I'm usually prepared to accept that. But in the case of this, it seems to me that this is actually a wildlife site that we're trying to, cover with light industrial units. And I know we need those. I am very aware of that. And I know in Exmouth, where I am, we've lost a lot and they're just not coming back again. We've got a few more just recently. but it seems to me that's a pretty high price to pay. So I'm keeping an open mind, but I am very balanced on this, and I really have serious concerns about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, when I read the report, there's quite an extensive one on the ecology, and it seems to be a bit of a haven for wildlife. And I found one couple of parts very concerning with the alleged poisoning of the lime trees, and the disappearance of the ponds, which was a habitat for the great crested newts. So whether they lived there permanently or not is in some doubt. Even so, it's something that's been lost. Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Chair.
Who?
It sort of makes me laugh in some ways. We keep talking about things have got to be sustainable. We are building, I don't know how many houses is it, Cobden, 500 is it? Something like that, 200? I know that the numbers, we didn't pass it that long ago. Quite a lot of houses, anyway, right next door. And obviously Cranbrook, right opposite. It's 400 metres away to where you cross the road to get to Cranbrook. I listened to Councillor Bloxham, who obviously knows this much better than me. But when you look at it as a picture, you know, that's exactly the sort of place you want, small units, or you need them nearby your houses so that people can walk to them. The only chance you've actually got of proper sustainability is having something that close. If you put it 3.5 kilometres away, I'm sure you can walk it, but the Sky Park from the centre of Cranbrook is 3 kilometres away, 2.5 kilometres away. I know the distance between the two and they're not exactly the same, but it's like, it's more believable to walk 400 metres to get there than it is to walk 2.5 kilometres. So I just think that, and again, we worry about this small area, and I was the same as you. When I first looked at it, I thought this was going to be straightforward, replacement building for some new units. But then when you look at it, you can only see this little thing in the corner, whatever, and the rest of it has been let go. But we are ripping up the fields next door and the hedgerows to put in the other thing. We're trying to leave a few trees there, and you know, we're worried about a small area. We're worried about the biodiversity net gain on that area, not on where the houses have gone. I will listen to others as well, but I think, you know, to me it made sense to have it there. It did look a little bit big, perhaps, for to begin with. But yeah, I'll listen and then make my mind up.
Yeah. Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I want to make complete scepticism on this side of the House. I want to join with Councillor Bloxham and Councillor Davey. I've got exactly the same concerns. I'm not convinced that this is a good application.
Thank you. Could I ask Mr. Winter, is there a take-up for these units yet?
Again, I couldn't speak to whether there are particular businesses interested in this site, but as I say, we do have a form where businesses log in their requirements because they're struggling to find space, and there are businesses in Cranbrook looking for spaces of this size and they can't find anywhere. And if we don't support applications like this, they will go to other towns, perhaps even out of the district. And again, you know, the implications for jobs, etc., on that are going to be considerable. Thank you.
Vice Chair, Councillor Hunt.
I think we're always concerned about bringing employment, especially when so many houses are having to be brought forward. But I think that to assume that people who are going to work in these units are going to be local people is a bit of a stretch, because we don't know exactly what businesses are going to move in. We don't know what the skill requirements will be, and whether people who happen to live nearby will happen to have the skills required to work in those units. So I think it's a bit of an unknown regarding the employment. And the second point I want to make is that when is a green wedge not a green wedge? Because you're either building on it or you're not. And this is, and it is, I think, quite a sizable development. And will be very noticeable, especially given that the previous building has fallen into disuse, and the point has already been made about the nature reclaiming the site, and that happens very quickly. Actually, in my past experience, I've seen that, and I'd echo the comments that the chair made regarding the length of the biodiversity report as well. So I have reservations, but again, like everyone else, listening to the debate.
Councillor Barlow, Councillor Heath.
Well, I was just going to say, when it's a green wedge, not a green wedge. Well, when it's in Sidmouth, when it's in Seaton, where they're building that one, when they're in the new local plan, where they're going into it. So again, everything changes. And a green wedge, I know we've invented it, but I'm not quite sure a green wedge actually stands in planning. I think it's a thing we've brought up that we like to do. But anyway, I'm also, again, we build the houses. I thought we were supposed to allocate small industrial units for every so many 100 houses we build. So have we done that in Cranbrook? Is there, so for every 200 houses you build in Cranbrook, do they give half a hectare for local employment land or not?
Mr. Winter, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll just say my team has objected on multiple occasions to housing developments in Cranbrook because the developments have they've not been mixed use. There have been no small scale industrial uses to go alongside that. So that's why I mentioned earlier that first step of the ladder is missing. So that has an impact on everything else further up. And, you know, I tend to find that if there are already jobs in a particular area, people are more likely to move to an area where they already work. So again, sort of linking that together perhaps might be worth thinking about. Thank you.
And again, on that, Chair, you know, I thought that's the whole point of it, to make something sustainable. There is no provision. If there is no provision there, you know, that is a step that is missing. And again, if you build the industrial units there, then even if people don't start living there because they travel there, if they're thinking about moving, then you're more likely to move somewhere where you can get on your bike or walk to work. That makes perfect sense. So having them there, I would have thought would be a benefit to Cranbrook.
Right. Councillor John Heath.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just find that 2,100 metres of floor space equates to 6,500 to 7,000 feet, which seems to be not a particularly small site. And if you're going to put that in green wedge land, that's going to impact upon ecology, the topography of the area. So I am struggling a bit with this. I think it was just a couple of units. I'd feel a lot more, maybe 2 or 3 units. I'd feel a lot more inclined to be supportive of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Yeah, can I just come back on the units? The members have already passed an application for Cranbox to be built in Cranbrook, which is in the town centre, which is much more central. So, and that was the business ladder and the first level of the business ladder. So that's going to be more directly in Cranbrook. And also, if you look at the application for the leisure centre that is out for consultation at the moment, there's some land on there that talks about is protected for light industrial units, again within Cranbrook town centre. So they are going to be more directly accessible for Cranbrook. And so when you're ready, Chair, I do have a proposal to make.
Sorry?
When you're ready, I have a proposal. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take Councillor Barlow and then we
Thank you, Chair. Cranbox, I believe, and I totally agree, it is a starting thing, but that's more retail. That's not meant as a, that's not meant, you're not going to allow a small tyre business to go in there or a metal fabricating building, the sort of thing that you want, the sort of the size of building they're putting up, the sort of thing that creates work that can then grow to go on to be a bigger thing, to step up to Sky Park. I think that's the step you're talking about, I presume Mr. Winter's missing, whereas retail will be covered with Cranbox, which is a great thing, small craft and things like that, where they're going to sell to the public. Most people that would go into an industrial, a small industrial estate would be, you know, things that supply, like the retailers, something a little bit bigger that would then supply the retailers to sell on, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mrs. Ormsby?
So just a couple of things. I just wanted to clarify a few things that have been mentioned. So one of them is regarding green wedge. So this clearly is within a green wedge. But just a reminder about what our policy says about development in green wedges. So it says that within green wedges, development will not be permitted if it would add to existing sporadic or isolated development, or damage the individual identity of a settlement, or could lead to or encourage settlement coalescence. So the policy isn't saying you shall not develop within a green wedge. It says that within a green wedge, you need to consider whether any of these impacts would arise. And having regard to the fact that we know there is a resolution to approve a significant number of houses on the land immediately adjacent, I don't think it would, I wouldn't consider this to be sporadic or isolated development. So then it's looking at, would it damage the individual identity of Rockbeer? That's obviously the main purpose of that green wedge. The officer view is because of the landscape containment that that site has, with the tree boundaries around it and with further landscaping that could come through there, that it won't, you will still clearly see the separation between this site and Rockbeer, and it won't compromise the identity of Rockbeer. Nor, in a similar way, would it lead to settlement coalescence. You've still got that it'll be visually contained, and you will still get a feeling of openness and a clear distinction of where the Rockbeer sits compared to this development. So for this reason, the officer view is, yes, it is within the green wedge, but it isn't actually contrary to the green wedge policy, and that's the officer assessment on that aspect. And I did also just want to mention to the comments that Councillor Bloxham read out from the report, which were comments from the tree officer. Those were indeed comments made by the tree officer, but subsequently, subject to amendments to the plans, those concerns and objections have now been satisfied. There is no longer an objection from the tree officer. So those were the main points that I wanted to make. I suppose other than just coming back to the fact that whether or not the people who live next door will or won't live in these units, I don't think that the recommendation really hinges upon that. It's the point I think we're making as officers is it will be adjacent to a very large settlement, and therefore, insofar as it can be, it's going to be as sustainably located. The chance of people coming by other means of than the car will be available, and that's really all you can do for any new development. You never know ultimately how the people will interrelate. So there's just a couple of comments I wanted to feed back on, because there was suggestion of proposals, just to put that in mind, and I don't know whether Mr. Brown's got anything he wanted to come back on.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to pick up on the debate that's taking place about the delivery of employment land for Cranbrook expansion areas. It's something that we looked at very carefully when the plan was going through examination, because we needed to try to evidence that there was sufficient employment land being provided for the expansion area housing. And the only way that we were able to do that was by recognising and allocating land from down at Shrewsbury, which is down next to Exeter Airport, but also recognising delivery of things like employment in the town centre, and the employment that will be generated from the retail areas in the neighbourhood centres. What we know we are lacking is this smaller sort of start-up units, and being located on the east, it is certainly it would be a valuable contribution to the community at Cranbrook, and particularly on the eastern side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you. I can see that officers realised that I was going to put a proposal on a recommendation to refuse this, which I am doing, and I would come back on all those comments that have just been made to say, well, I'll still disagree with all those comments, and that's the officer's view. But my view is that I would propose a refusal of this one, and I'll look for a seconder of that. And my reasons, I can give you reasons because I know that Mr Hunter will ask for reasons.
Yes, yes.
So I do believe that the proposed development is in the countryside and outside the built-up area boundary of any settlement and located within the Green Wedge. So strategies 7 and 8 of the local plan, policy ROC 06 and 07 of
Councillor,
Yeah.
when giving these reasons, can you bear in mind that people are trying to desperately write them down?
Surely, I can read them slowly for you
You're going
if you
very
need
quickly,
me to.
thank you.
Strategy 7 and 8 of the local plan. Policy ROC 06 and 07 of the Rockbere neighbourhood plan. Strategic policy SP 06 and policy OL 05 of the emerging local plan. Got those ones? Strategic policy SP 06 and policy OL 05 of the emerging local plan. The proposed development is within the expanded Cliss Valley Regional Park, which is policy WS09 CVRP of the emerging local plan. The development would result in harm to the setting and significance of the Grange Hotel, policy EN8 of the local plan, which is significance of heritage assets and their setting, and policy HE01 of the emerging local plan. And with regard to the tree protection, etc., policy D3 of the local plan, trees and development sites, policy BP08 of the emerging local plan. Will that help?
That's very helpful. I mean, what we'll do now, we'll ask Mrs Ormsby to comment on those, but what might be helpful as well, if you've got them written down, is perhaps to pass them to Wendy afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, there's been a proposal to refuse. Is there a seconder? Or two seconders? Yeah, well, councillor Davey.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I'd also like to add to that that the committee, or we certainly, don't feel that this really counts as a previously developed site, in that it has been reclaimed by nature and really counts as a new site in the countryside.
Thank you. Councillor Levine, do you want to add to that?
Not really, they've done their homework.
They certainly have. Right, members. Yes?
Okay, so just, first of all, just clarifying, so the first reason is that it's contrary to the spatial strategy because it is outside the built-up area boundary. And I mean, in many cases where we're saying something is contrary to the spatial strategy and we're saying it's outside of a development boundary, we would therefore be going on to say the harm that will arise from that normally is development where there's, you know, you're going to be reliant on, you know, use of the private car, inadequate access to public transport and means of other travel. But well, and what I'm asking, because obviously we've got to be able to defend these at appeal, bearing in mind what we've said. Well, I suppose my caution for this is, I think bearing in mind the consents, the allocations and the consents that have been granted, and where there is going to be those links through, the fact that you have got bus stops on the London Road, is that your it's clarifying not just that it's contrary to the policy, but what is the harm that arises from it being contrary to the policy. So so I'm focusing on strategy 7. So are you saying that you think it is in an inaccessible location where people will be reliant on use of the car?
There isn't a good bus route along there. There are bus stops.
I suppose, but it's relative. If you're looking at, you know, I mean, I recognise, but bearing in mind we're in East Devon, You know, and we're being, you know, the availability of public transport is relative, isn't it? We're not in a big urban area. Insofar as what other sites are there that are going to be more accessible, I suppose, bearing in mind that it is off the London Road where there are buses, and the fact that there are going to be houses very close by. So it's effectively right on the edge of that built-up area boundary. I just want to be clear what we're putting in here, because we've got to be able to defend it. So if it's simply, it's contrary to the spatial strategy, and this is not the right location because of that, and we've allocated other land, which is the more suitable land for employment development, then you...
I think it is more suitable land for employment development is within Sky Park, and where the Lidl and the Amazon is, where all the units are for that type of development, rather than in the middle of the new housing.
Okay, so contrary to the spatial strategy, and we're not going to add in the inaccessible location aspect.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one, and then the second one is development in the Green Wedge. So looking at the policy on the Green Wedge, so again, so it's looking which aspects of that policy do you, so the things that the policy specifies, it will not be permitted if it adds to sporadic or isolated development, or damages the individual identity of a settlement, or could lead to or encourage settlement coalescence. So those are the three things, and so it's asking which one or more of them do you think that it will result in? Damage the individual identity of a settlement, or could lead to or encourage settlement coalescence. Lead to or encourage settlement. And that's due to the visual, the built development you consider will be visible beyond the site boundaries, and therefore it will give an impression of growth out towards the settlement. And then the Clyst Valley issues, and I'm just trying to find our Clyst Valley policies. I wouldn't recommend that. I don't think that policy carries enough weight at this stage. Obviously, that's a decision for members, but that would be my advice. Harm to the setting of the Grange Hotel, that's reasonably, in terms of I understand what you're saying. Obviously, as officers, we consider that the harm is outweighed by the benefits. And D3, there is no objection from the tree officer. I think that would be hard to sustain at appeal. So,
if you're adding the one that Councillor Davey proposed as well.
I don't know that it's in itself a reason for refusal. In my view, it's the fact that it's a brownfield site is justification that weighs in favour of approving it. It isn't. There isn't a policy that says you shall not build on land that isn't brownfield. So it would be what policy would we be directing to? I think that's more a part of the argument that might be made. Well, was the officer view is part of the overall considerations that weigh in favour of this development is its development of brownfield land. I hear the view, I mean, the officer view to you very much is we do feel that it is brownfield land, that it is not in terms of, because it's previously developed and we're of the view that it has not been so overtaken by nature as to now have reverted back to greenfield status. It's very high bar to get to that stage. So we respectfully disagree with the view that, you know, has been put by Councillor Olive and yourselves on that matter. But nevertheless, that is more an argument that would come in your supporting statement. I don't think in itself it's a reason for refusal. It's a reason that you are giving less weight. You've decided not to give weight to that. You are in your reasoning saying we don't think it's a brownfield land. Therefore, there's in the planning balance, there's less reasons that weigh in favour of this development. It's not in itself, in my view, an actual reason for refusal. So of the the 5 reasons that have been put forward, the reasons that I would suggest to members that they focus on are, well, it's actually 3. It's that it's outside of the built-up area boundary and contrary to the spatial strategy in terms of the suitable location for employment development. It's within the green wedge and due to the visual impact of the development will lead to or encourage settlement coalescence with the village of Rockbeer, and that it results in less than substantial harm to the setting of the Grange Hotel listed building.
Can I just clarify the question that Councillor Davies just asked? Is the non-designated heritage asset is the Grange Hotel? I didn't think the Grange Lodge was. I think it's just a hotel it's been identified in that regard. The cautions that the officers were looking at in relation to the lodge was amenity based, not from a heritage perspective.
Okay. Yeah, no.
While they're thinking about that, Chair,
Councillor Barlow, yes.
I just wonder, you know, it's a non-designated heritage. Does it carry the same weight as a designated heritage asset, or is it just that it hasn't got there yet?
So designated heritage assets are your grade 2 star, etc. buildings. This is not of that stature, and there's been no suggestion that it would become such. It is just a locally identified important building. The harm that has been identified to that by our conservation officers is identified as slight. And therefore I caution the weight that members need to be considering in terms of the defendability of that as a reason for refusal.
Yeah. Okay, did you want to come back? You finished?
No, those are my
Okay.
those are my recommendations.
Right, members, we can move to the vote.
We need to agree if they're happy with those 3 as the reasons for refusal.
Yeah, are you happy with those reasons for refusal? Policy reasons?
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy? Yeah. Okay, then, Damien. Vote.
Madam Chair, if you just want to
Yeah,
do it.
can
After that, they've got the reasons.
show of hands for all those in favour of refusal, please. 4, 5. And those against? None. Abstentions? 3 abstentions.
I don't think Councillor Brown wasn't here at the beginning.
Yes, he did, he abstained.
So he's abstained.
Thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. Right, move on to the next one, agenda item 7, planning. Sorry?
Could we have a
Oh,
comfort
do you want a
break, please?
comfort break? You take 5, 5:30 back? Yeah? Okay. Oh, I didn't expect that to happen. think we're all back. Yeah, we'll resume the meeting then. Yeah, application, item 7, application number 260213. It's a variation for Winslade Park, Cliff St Mary, pages 88 to 116. Senior Planning Officer Jamie Quinton, present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So the following application for you to consider is an application that seeks to vary condition 3, which is the approved plans list of Planning Permission 20/1001/MOUT for the redevelopment of Winslade Park by omitting land within an area of designated open space, referred to within the application as Zone K. The development otherwise retains permission for up to 94 dwellings, reinstatement of playing pitches, the refurbishment and provision of commercial and leisure floor space, together with site-wide landscaping and parking. The original outline consent was subject to a Section 106 agreement, which secured habitat mitigation, footway contributions, the provision and maintenance of sports facilities, public access to parklands, the delivery of children's play area, affordable housing, and mechanisms for viability review. If members resolve to approve this Section 173 application, this would be subject to agreeing a deed of variation to ensure that these planning obligations are again secured. So on your screen now is the approved location plan on the outline permission, which encloses the site in red. You've got Exmouth Road here to the west, got the A3052 to the north, and just at the top of the image there, you've got the primary school here, village hall here, and the garden centre here. Grindle Brook runs through the site here. On your screens now is a satellite image of the site. So the site includes this parcel of agricultural land here. You've got the existing football club to the west of that, and the site is bordered by residential development to the north. Winslade Manor is located just about here, which is a Grade 2-star listed building. You've got Winslade House just to the south. Brook House is just about here, and then you've got Clist House here. The area for you to consider today is Zone K, which is to the south here, which is open parkland, which also includes this poplar plantation to the south and east. So on your screen now is the currently approved master plan, which subdivides the site into various zones. So I'm just going to run through what is currently consented in each zone. So here we have Zone A. So this was the parcel that was approved for residential development. The council approved reserve matters application for the construction of 38 dwellings, 4 of which we delivered as affordable units. And that was determined in a planning committee in June 2022. The second parcel of residential development is here, known as Zone D. So that secured approval for development of 40 apartments, which was approved at planning committee in the same year. And these are to be delivered through the construction of 3 4-storey apartment blocks. So the last in the series of reserve matters concerned Zone C, which secured approval for the layout of playing pitches, children's play area, and a replacement pavilion and changing room facilities here. The same application also detailed the layouts of footpaths and landscaping within Zone K here. So members may have noted that the description developed refers to the consent as a hybrid permission, and that's because that application secured detailed permission for the redevelopment and refurbishment of Winslade Manor, Winslade House in Zone E, leisure facilities in the stables building in Zone F, and refurbishment of Clist House in Zone H, and extensions to Brook House in Zone G. Additional parking was also permitted in Zone J. So just going to run through a couple of site photos. Oh, sorry, on your slide now is the amended master plan. So the key difference is the omitted, that this seeks to omit an area of land within Zone K, which is coloured in grey here. And the land to be removed is approximately 1.74 hectares. This is the land where the planning inspector allowed an appeal for the development of a solar farm, which I'll come to in a second. So these are now the site photos of Zone K. So the site is predominantly consists of grassland and mature trees. Zone K is entirely within flood zone 3A and 3B, which is classed as functional floodplain by the Environment Agency. Members will note that distinct poplar plantation that characterises the southern and eastern boundaries. And this photo here is looking back towards the rear of Winslade Houses, which is here, and Brook House here. So on your screen now is the proposed amended master plan, which has been cropped to just really focus on Zone K, alongside the approved site plan for the solar farm development allowed at appeal in February 2025. So members may be aware of the Hillside Supreme Court judgment. This confirmed that where you have a consented planning permission and a later permission authorises something physically inconsistent with the former consent, there can be a question over whether both permissions can still be lawfully implemented. In this case, the original hybrid permission showed the grade area of Zone K as open parkland. Subsequently, the solar farm was allowed on appeal on part of the same land. The concern is not that either permission is invalid, but that there is now inconsistency between the approved plans. This Section 73 application is therefore largely a tidying up exercise. It updates the approved master plan, omitting the area of land occupied by the solar farm from Zone K to remove any potential conflict once that development is delivered. The application could be described as a slot-out permission, with the approved solar farm scheme considered the slot-in consent. Notwithstanding this, a point for members to be aware of is that whether the two consents cause a hillside conflict is not the planning issue you need to determine today. The planning question remains whether removing approximately 1.74 hectares from Zone K would cause unacceptable planning harm. The hillside issue is simply the reason why the applicant has brought the application forward. So in terms of the level of planning harm caused, Planning Committee resolved to refuse the solar farm application partly on the basis that the development would render the area inaccessible to residents, thereby reducing the level of amenity afforded to existing and future residents of the area. In response to this matter, Inspector Pope concluded that the proposal would not have any substantive impact on the provision of accessible parklands, concluding that the proposal would not conflict with Policy D1 of the local plan. Now, the two key paragraphs have been included in your committee reports, but have been put on your screens now. So, given the limited harm that can be attributed to the reduction of Zone K, when revisiting the benefits and harm of the original outline consent, the planning balance remains in favour of approval. As such, it is recommended that the appropriate assessment is adopted and approval is granted subject to the conditions listed at the end of your committee report and a deed of variation to the original Section 106 agreement to ensure it follows this Section 73 consent to secure the various planning obligations in relation to affordable housing, footway and habitat contributions, provision of the NEEP and community uses for the sports and leisure facilities is secured. Thank you, Chair.
I have something to read out. Yeah. Although we understand the legal planning implications of having two different planning approvals on Zone K and the need for updating the plan to show the solar arrays instead of the previous approval of Zone K as a recreational amenity space, but having read the East Devon District Council's planners report to committee and the recommended approval conditions, we still do not fully understand the effect and outcome that an approval of this one drawing will have. Could a planning officer at this meeting clarify to us and the planning committee members why the previously approved residential areas of zones A and D are included on this new substantial plan when the required change only refers to Zone K? Both reserved matters planning approvals for zones A and D residential areas have now exceeded their condition time limits set by EDDC, with no development work on either site having begun. So, have both zones A and D residential sites been included within this new plan to circumvent the time limit obstacle on zones A and D. So the approval of this one plan will not only fix a serious legal planning issue of two contradictory permissions on Zone K, but also renew and regenerate both lapsed planning approvals for zones A and D at the same time, without the applicant having to submit two entirely new applications. We would be grateful if clarification on this planning matter could be explained by planners during this meeting to both the committee members, ourselves, and the residents. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. So I think one of the first questions there was about the inclusion of zones A and D on that amended master plan, and whether almost it was a get around to include them again, given the concerns about whether or not time had expired for them to make a material commencement. Now that the master plan is still, in terms of layout of those residential parcels, is indicative, and the actual layout design of those parcels are governed by the reserve matters consent that came after the original outline. In terms of the timeframes within which the applicant needed to submit their reserve matters, they submitted them in time, and we're happy with that. And they have 2 years after determination of the last reserve matters, which was at the start of the year, in order to ensure that the development's lawful. So we're happy on those points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Could you confirm, please, is it right, it's just 5 affordable houses on the whole lot? And I presume, having given them now 1.75 hectares of solar panels, they'll be making more profit. So can we ask for more affordable houses?
I need to come back on the affordable housing, because actually what's been secured as part of the legal agreement is 4 affordable housing, 4 affordable units. At outline, we were looking to secure 5 because of the numbers. It was up to 94 dwellings. Actually, what's come forward is a much lower number, and we're dragging that from Zone A, which is seeking to provide 38 units. So we're securing 4 units, and that's secured through the current Section 106 agreement. In terms of the delivery of the solar farm and whether or not they'll be making more money, that the solar farm is to serve the employment part of the site, and there's no evidence for us to suggest that that's going to increase the profitability of the development to such an extent that we should be securing more affordable housing that relates to the residential parcels on this scheme.
But surely, at the end of the day, if it was going to be parkland, they wouldn't build it if there was no benefit to them. So someone somewhere is getting a benefit out. Otherwise, they wouldn't build it. So if they're getting a benefit out of it, why are we only getting 4 houses when we wanted 5? And not being funny, there was 40 flats, I think you're putting in the thing. But I presume we're saving a listed building or something like that we don't get listed. Do we get affordable housing in there or not? Why are we getting so few affordable houses? And can we ask for more if we have given them 1.7 hectares of solar panels? It must be valuable to someone.
I don't think the nature of, so the planning permission for the solar farm is already granted. That's happened. This really is just effectively a technical tidying up exercise to make sure that the permission as it moves forward remains lawful. It isn't subject to hillside challenges, which is when you make the argument that you're not developing out in accordance with the original plan because now it's changed. I don't think that it would be reasonable in the context of this application to be revisiting all of the other issues, including affordable housing that came forward. As Mr. Quinton said, the solar farm that was granted, my understanding at the time that was through is it is to generate, a low carbon, because one of the ethos of the business park is one of their development ethos is about being a low carbon development. So it is very much focused towards the business scheme, not the residential. And you're right. I mean, one of the likely, I mean, I wasn't involved in the original consents, but where you are, where there are viability issues with listed buildings, it does often have knock-on implications for affordable housing. But the short answer is, we could not justify looking to revisit the affordable housing simply by this sort of technical exercise of rejigging a red line boundary to reflect a permission that's already been granted by the Planning Inspectorate.
But, sorry, I don't want to go on like that, but it's their, all their land. They have a choice. They didn't have to put that bit in if they didn't want to. They wanted it. We didn't want to give it to them. They won it on appeal, fair enough, but that comes at a cost. And at the end of the day, we want another affordable house. Can we go back to them now and say, right, we want another affordable house? You're saying you don't think we can. Is that something that we can put in as a condition?
It certainly couldn't be a condition. It would need to, if you were going to do that, you'd have to defer it. We'd have to go back to them. They might then have to revisit a whole new viability appraisals to demonstrate whether or not they could or couldn't provide one additional house. I don't think it would be reasonable in the context of this amendment to the site layout plan to request that. Well, I mean, in my view, I don't think in the context of the solar farm that there's a direct link between the delivery of the solar farm and the amount of affordable housing. If it was going to be addressed because of, if it was considered that the solar farm was bringing added value that could therefore finance more affordable housing, it should have been at the stage when permission was being considered for the solar farm. That's already now been granted.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder if you could reassure me that the legal issues raised by the parish councils have been addressed properly, because as I read it on page 98, nothing has actually been signed and dated.
Sorry, Councillor, could you expand on what you mean by the legal issues? Yes, no, absolutely. So there's been some back and forth with the parish, who are understandably keen to ensure that the community use agreement for the playing pitches, the pavilion, and also access to the open space is secured. That is, I think Councillor Davies just said, is included within the conditions. There's also part of the Section 106 agreement that ensures that is entered into, but it's tied to a certain percentage of occupation on the residential parcels. So the developer has still got time to address that.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
I think we can cut to the chase here, because quite frankly, the issue of affordable housing isn't part of this application. And I was on the committee that approved the original application, and the reason the amount of affordable housing was low was because it was going to cost a huge amount to refurbish and bring back into use these listed buildings. It was accepted at the time that we were only going to get a small amount of affordable housing, and I don't think we can link the inclusion of some solar panels with that. Well, what a dilemma for a Green, you know. I've got solar panels against community amenity space. You know, how do I balance that up? But looking at the plans, there is still a considerable amount of amenity space left. We're not losing any of the important sporting facilities that were being offered as part of this application. It was a huge and complex application when it first came up, and it's been subject to various modifications. And I can assure Ian also that it has struggled for viability ever since that permission was granted. But it is happening, it is going through. So I would like to propose approval because I think that there's still a reasonable amount of space there. It really is just saying, in view of the hillside judgment, we need to square this up and make sure that the approved plans are what is actually going to be built out.
Thank you. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Hughes? Did you want to speak, Stuart? No? Okay. We did go on a site visit there as well a few years ago. We did? Yeah, yeah. So, right, all those in favour of, oh, wait a minute, adopt the appropriate assessments. Yeah, can we take a vote to adopt the appropriate assessment? That's unanimous. Secure the deed of variation to original section 106 agreement to secure planning applications with the section 73 application. All agreed? Thank you, unanimous. And approval with conditions. Unanimous. Thank you, members. That was fairly painless compared to some we've had this week. Right. Item 8, planning application 260201, full land adjacent to Oak Cottage behind Hayes, Otterton, pages 117 to 134. Recommendation is to approve with conditions. Mrs. Ormsby, thank you, Jamie.
Right, thank you. So the application before you is for the erection of a new 4-bedroom dwelling with an attached garage at land adjacent to Oak Cottage behind Hayes at Otterton. And this application is before you because it is a departure from the local plan. At the moment, there is no development boundary at Otterton, and therefore it is contrary to policy, to Strategy 7, development in the countryside. So this is the application site here, along the street known as behind Hayes. And just pointing out here, you've got the community shop up to the top left here. And you've got buses, pub and church located along 4th Street at the top of the image. And the site here is probably about a 5-minute walk round to the community services. Although it is notable that the route as you walk along beyond Hayes doesn't have pavements and is not lit. The site immediately to the north here is allocated for housing development in the local plan, and access to that will be taken from the same similar point on behind Hayes, and so would have a similar route to get to the local services. It is also notable that Otterton at the moment, as I mentioned, does not have a built-up area boundary. In the emerging local plan, it is proposed to have a settlement boundary, and the application site would be within that settlement boundary. So effectively, the emerging local plan is identifying Otterton as a sustainable settlement capable of accommodating some further housing development. So this is the site itself. So you've got Oak Cottage here to the right, and originally this was one single curtilage with an existing dwelling on it. and permission was granted in the early 2000s to initially, well, I think it was granted 2001 permission to demolish that house and to build 2 houses within the plot. However, a separate application came forward just for a single dwelling, and that was what has been built out here. So that's the new dwelling at Oak Cottage. This site seeks to develop the remaining part of the curtilage for a second dwelling. But this is saying, bearing in mind that consent was previously granted for 2 on the site. So the intention is to use the access that's been put in as part of the consent for Oak Cottage, and it's set quite well back into the site in line with Oak Cottage itself, and it's raised up above the road with hedgerow planting along the front. And you can see here the elevations and floor plans. So it's a 4-bedroomed property with en suites and attached garage. As you can see, it's quite an unusually wide property. So you've got the 2-story element here and this sort of elongated single-story element, which is something office did look like carefully, because the proportions of it are not ideal from a architectural perspective. However, because it is, as I mentioned previously, set so far back into the site, raised and with the hedge in front, I think the actual, you won't appreciate the entirety of that building. You will only see it in parts and in glimpses. This is the street elevations. Again, this is sort of looking straight on. In fact, you'll be looking at it from a much lower level. You would not get that view of the entire frontage of the building. And this is the site section. So this is showing the level of the road down here, the banks and the dwelling. And this is the new build Oak Cottage. Here, this is the field opposite, which is allocated for housing. This is the bank, so there's going to be a hedgerow planted up here, which will serve to screen the site. That's looking into the site, sort of halfway up along the drive. And this is showing where the location of the dwelling will be along the top in here. And this is a view facing northeast towards the neighbours that are directly opposite. So this is the access looking down here. So the key issue here is currently it is contrary to the development plan. However, what we're looking at here is it is designated as a sustainable settlement, and it would be within the development boundary. So it's recognised that because there are no footpaths and street lights, at night time there may be some limited reliance on the motor vehicle, but effectively the dwelling will read as being part of the village, where there is already, I think, an expectation of motor users of people being on the roads, and also bearing in mind the housing allocation opposite, which is accepting this as a suitable access point. So for those reasons, it's deemed that it is in a suitably sustainable location for development. There's very limited landscape harm arising. Obviously, we're looking at this in the context of the 5-year housing land supply, tilted balance in favour of sustainable development, and it is providing one additional dwelling, as I mentioned, supported by the emerging local plan. So there's no technical objections to this, and this is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Parkin. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. And thank you for the 3 minutes to say something about this application. Pat and I have lived in Otterton and worked in Otterton for the last 40 years or more. And we retired 3 years ago. We're now in our early 80s, and we're now thinking about the people who've left the village because there's no suitable housing for people once they get a bit dodgy on their legs, can't get upstairs, or have other disabilities. There are about 6 bungalows, I think, in the village. They rarely come up for sale. So what we're building, or proposing to build, is a house which will see us out for the rest of our lifetime, and will then become a multi-generational house for future purposes. The key thing is that we can get up downstairs perfectly well at the moment, but we know from experience that a lot of people can't do that when they get in there a little bit older than us. And we can imagine the problems we would have wanting to move away from the village where all our friends are and where we've lived for so long. So that's why we have the 2 downstairs bedrooms, and we've made easy access from the outside to those downstairs bedrooms should we need live-in carers or carers who visit on a daily basis in the future. So it's trying to future-proof the building. I noticed that the photographs that were taken of the site were taken in the winter, so it doesn't give a terribly good impression of what the site is actually like. The site that we're proposing to build the house on is part of our garden. It's not a separate dwelling site at the moment. It's part of our garden. You can see that in that picture that in that garden we've got greenhouse, we've got a summer house, we've got decking, we've got trellis work, we've got ornamental trees, shrubs and flowers, and it's an absolute picture at the moment. What it has got is a big space in the middle. It's got nothing on it, no plants, no trees, nothing. And that is because for the last 20 years, that open space has been retained for the second dwelling. We were unaware of the fact that the outline planning permission was overridden by the permission to build the first house. We assumed that the permission to build 2 houses there was an extant permission, and that one house had been built and there was space for the other. But I want to thank Jack Richards, the planning officer, because he let me have a very detailed explanation of why this application has come before the committee for these technical reasons.
Can you draw to a conclusion now, please?
Sorry.
You're over. Could you finish up now?
Oh yeah, sorry, I've
Thank you.
finished. Yes, yeah, I won't pursue the brownfield site things, but it's clearly not a brownfield.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Thank
Right, members, any questions? Councillor Barlow.
Just wanted to ask, is there a school in Otterson? Thank you, that's all. Just clarifying for next one coming up.
I'm going to cut to the chase again and just suggest we approve this. I can't see any reasons for no reasons for objection to this. No Otterton Well, it's a very sustainable village. It's got shop, pub, got Otterton Mill. And we'll come to that. Let's not jump the gun. And a thriving school, church. So I just don't see an issue with this. There's no wildlife implications or anything like that. So I suggest we approve it. It's been very clearly explained why the slightly unusual form of the building, which I initially thought, but That's been very clearly explained, so thank you.
It will be well screened. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Levine, anything to add?
Yes, please. Chair, you know that I get an allergic reaction whenever I see complaints about car use in the countryside. So I would like to welcome the last sentence in the middle paragraph that says that we can use cars in the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's move on from the horse and cart, isn't it? Right, can we go to the vote then, members? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now, item 9, that's approved then. Planning application 252614, full application, land to the west of Stockland, Church of England Primary School, Stockland, pages 135 to 170, and the recommendation is to refuse. Over to Mrs. Ormsby.
So, okay, so this application, land west of Stockland, description is proposal to reinstate a historic barn with an extension to form one dwelling with associated works. So members may well recall this came to committee last year and it was refused. The description of the development was the same, and the principal differences between this scheme and the previous scheme is that the access point has been relocated, and there's been some changes to the elevation, well, effectively more to the windows of the barn. Those are the main changes, which we'll come to look at in more detail. But just pointing, so I think what's an important starting point is recognising that the council refused this application for 4 reasons. So those reasons were that there is no support for policy D8, which would support conversion of rural buildings in the countryside, because it was agreed that it is not a conversion, it is a new build on the site of an existing building. So it was development in the countryside. Obviously it's outside the built-up area boundary, so not supported by policy D8. It was refused because it was an unsustainable location with reliance on the car, undue reliance on the car. The location of the site access within flood zones 2 and 3. The adverse impact on the setting of the adjacent Grade 1 listed church. That it had adverse landscape impact and fails to conserve and enhance the national landscape. And that it failed to demonstrate it wouldn't have a harmful impact on the river access, SSI and SAC, regarding nutrient neutrality. So in considering this application, it's important that the council is consistent in its decision making, and members need to consider whether or not they feel that this revised application overcomes those reasons for refusal. So this is the application. So this is a Google image, the red arrow indicating the location of the application site. So that's showing it in the context of the village of Stockland. Over here is the Grade 1 listed St Michael's and All Angels Church, obviously the graveyard, which immediately abuts the boundary of the application site. You have the primary school, which is here, Stockland Primary School. You have this large building here is the Grade 2 listed vicarage. Stockland, unlike, well, in the same way as the village we were just looking at, Stockland doesn't have a built-up area boundary. There is no proposal in the emerging local plan to put a built-up area boundary around Stockland. So in the context of the current and the emerging local plan, Stockland is not deemed to be a sustainable settlement capable of accommodating further housing development. So the site is considered as against Strategy 7 development within the countryside. It is located within the Blackdown Hills National Landscape. It is outside of, but adjacent to the conservation area boundary, and it is within the catchment of the River Axe, SAC and SSSI. This shows the application site boundary, and sort of one of the main changes with this application is that previously the access went out this way here, which was through flood zones 2 and 3. And that was one of the reasons for refusing the application. The access is now, so this is what this sort of looped red line is showing here, a proposed alternative access point out onto the road up here that is not through flood zones 2 or 3, it goes through flood zone 1. And this red line here is indicating the proposed drainage field. It's proposed to provide a package treatment plant for the dwelling. So this is an excerpt from electronic mapping, and what this is showing is the location of listed buildings. So this is the application site. This little pink thing here is the barn, the site on which they're proposing to build the new house. This is the grade 1 listed church, and the pale pink show the location of grade 2 listed buildings. And you see here the outline of the boundary of the conservation area. This is a bit more of a zoomed in image of the site. So here's the church and graveyard in here. This is the school, and this is the application site in here. And this is just showing the slope contours, so the land is sort of sloping down, or more to the point, rising up slightly as you move away from the church. This is showing the existing floor plans of the building, and part of the justification or explanation for the sort of the design ethos for the building is so that this barn formed part of a site that included a separate building, a sawmill that's now demolished, no longer there. This building was associated with that originally, and more recently, well, it's obviously there's no sawmill function there anymore. The roof of this has now just been, it did formerly have a pitched roof on it, but the roof has now been replaced as a flat roof, and it's just used as an agricultural store. And as you'll see, it's just got a very simple utilitarian sort of agricultural character set into the slope. As this is agricultural land, this is not deemed to be a brownfield site. Agricultural buildings on land do not meet the definition of brownfield development, and that is clearly set out in the NPPF and in planning case law. This is the existing roof plan of the building that's there now. So this is the proposed floor plan, and what you have is this rectangular element of the floor plan sits in a similar location. So it sits over the footprint of the existing building, but it is wider and deeper. So it's effectively a new build element. The building is a new build dwelling. You've then got this added extension element on the end here, and then it is cutting itself back into the bank of the land. You'll see that better through some sections. So this is a sort of a semi-subterranean part of the house, and this is the main frontage of the dwelling. And in terms of comparing this with the existing, so it's 2 meters taller to the ridge of the roof as it is currently, 9 meters longer than the building, and 1.9 meters wider. And this is the same footprint as in the scheme that was previously refused. The main difference is what was previously proposed as garages, because the access was going to be coming from this side, is now proposed as a store because the access will be over here instead. This shows the roof plan. You can see you've got the flat roof, sort of sedum roof built into the roof slope here, and the main roof frontage, pitch roof at the front. Sorry, this is a very tiny plan. I don't know whether I can zoom in a little bit here, just to make that a little bit clearer. So this is the proposed site plan. And once I zoom in, unfortunately, the pointer doesn't work, but hopefully you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got the new access route that runs through the land up to the road here. So sort of, and then it's coming through, then there'll be a parking area here. And then you would walk through, although the plans are not really very clear about the arrangement of how that, we haven't got a detailed landscaping scheme showing, you know, presumably there will be footpaths, etc., that take you walking on foot through to the front of the house here. But it is acknowledged that the access point is now outside of flood zones 2 and 3. And so for that reason, it is no longer proposed that the application is refused on the grounds of flood risk. This shows the section through the building with the sort of the green roof, flat roof element at the back. And this is a proposed landscape plan. Again, it's still not, to show a little bit more detail, it's still not terribly clear about the definitions of the actual site boundaries, etc. But this does show parking for cars in here, just at sort of the end of this access road here. Oh, sorry, to get the laser pointer. So just for context, this is the elevations of the scheme that was refused. And this is in the context, so it's obviously relevant that this application was refused because of the adverse impact on the character and appearance of the national landscape. Obviously, we have to give great weight to conserving and enhancing the national landscape, and also now furthering the purposes of the national landscape, and also refused on the grounds of the adverse impact on the setting of the adjacent Grade 1 listed church. So that is the scheme that was refused, and this is the scheme that we now have before us. So the building, the height, the width, the length, so the changes to it are that the windows are now, I think, recessed. I think there might be a bit more of an overhang of the eaves of the building. So, and there are louvers proposed which could be used to slide over the windows to reduce the impact of glazing and night. But so that's the main difference. But in other respects, it is very, very similar to the application in terms of scale, built, massing, design, etc. And another, you've obviously got a slightly different treatment here because these are no longer proposed as garages. And these are the east and south elevations, which again are very, very similar to the scheme that was previously refused. So these are the proposed foul drainage arrangements. And again, let me see if I can zoom in to make this a little bit more legible for you. So previously, the application, one of the reasons it was refused was because this site is within the catchment of the River Axe, where we have the issue of nutrient neutrality. We can't have any new development that is going to increase foul sewage going into the main sewerage system unless it is mitigated. And it is a big problem. It's been a problem, and it comes up very regularly within this ex-catchment of how to overcome this issue. I know it's something that more widely we're working on as a council to come up with potential strategies and mitigation banks, etc., to try to enable development to overcome this issue, but we're not yet in that situation. what they're proposing, so it was one of the reasons last time that they hadn't demonstrated how they would achieve nutrient neutrality. And in this instance, they're now proposing a package treatment plant here as a way of managing on-site their foul waste, as a way of trying to overcome that particular hurdle. The issue we have is that the advice of the Environment Agency is that where there is mains sewerage available, development should, where it is, feasible and practical, should connect to that main sewerage. And one of the guidelines is that if a development site is within 30 metres of a main sewer, it should connect into that main sewer. And this application site is within 30 metres of a main sewer. And there have been challenges from the applicant who say the building is more than 30 metres. I think the building is 36 metres from the main sewer. But it is very clear that it is the site boundary. And the reason is that it isn't looking at the actual length of connection. It's the length of connection outside of the land ownership that is considered to be the constraint. And so once you are within your own site boundary, and this is also how building regs look at it, then the issue is not how far you are within your boundary, but how far have you got to go outside of your site boundary to the mains. And that is, in this instance, it would be the 30 metres. And so for that reason, officers are quite clear that the test is there remains within 30 metres of the site boundary, and their answer is yes. Therefore, this should be connecting into the mains. And I note that the found drainage assessment form that's been submitted in support of the application gives us their reason to why they feel they can't connect, is that there is not capacity at the sewage treatment range. There isn't capacity in the sewage network for them to connect to. However, that hasn't been verified by South West Water. And also, the advice from Environment Agency is that lack of capacity in the network is not a reason not to connect to justify, because you go through the hierarchy of drainage connections, and main sewer is the first one, that's your preferred one. Then it comes package treatment, then septic tanks. But the Environment Agency are very clear that they say that lack of capacity in the network is not a reason not to connect. The reason being is that South West Water are statutorily bound to allow connections and to provide that capacity. So applying those tests, there would not be justification to say to move down the hierarchy to the point of allowing a package treatment plant. And I recognise that may seem, well, that seems arguably, well, if they connect to the main sewer, then they're stuck because they've got the nutrient neutrality issue. So surely the package treatment plant is this sort of the sensible option. However, when we're looking at this from a consistency point, because this would be the solution for many developments within the Axe catchment, but package treatment plant are not a preferable means of long-term management of mains sewage. So there are a number of applications that have failed on this, solely on this point. And this council has been taking the consistent view that where you are within that 30 metres, then you should be connecting to the main sewer. And if that means that you then have the nutrient neutrality issue, then that means the planning permission should be refused. And that is the approach that we have been taking on this matter. Then we're moving on through here. So we've got some illustrative views of the development from the east of the churchyard. And here's some illustrative views from the churchyard. These are taken from the design and access statement provided by the applicant. These are photos taken from the side of the church looking through. You can just get glimpses of the building there at the moment. This is looking across, and I think it is notable that This, I suppose, when you look back at this image here, it indicates that it's sort of set almost at the level of the existing hedge, and it potentially, the views will be diffused by the hedge. But then when you look at it in this line, the sighting is clearly above the existing hedgerow level. So you will see the building in its entirety when you're viewing it from the churchyard. And again, it's acknowledged that at one point in the past, there was a roof on this building, but it isn't there anymore. And this is not a proposal to convert a building. This is a new building in the countryside. What you see up here is the school. So the school, when you're looking out from the churchyard at the moment, the only buildings you see are the school building and this low-level agricultural barn. This is looking southeast towards the site here. And this is again looking from the churchyard southeast. And this is the boundary of the conservation area here. This is now looking up from the gateway into the site here. So this will be the sort of the foreground, effectively, of the site. As you can see, largely undeveloped and quite sort of agricultural in character. This is the building that's there. And this is the highway to the east of the site, looking southeast. So this shows where the proposed access onto the public highway will come. And this is looking southwest across at the access route, which runs through the field along the far side hedge and through the gateway opening, which I think is somewhere around here. You can't see it terribly well in this picture. And this is looking at the continuation of the access route into the site, which will pass through the gateway. So the key issues here, as I said, I think the starting point for this is we've previously considered a very, very similar scheme. So members need to decide, have those reasons for refusal been overcome? The officer's view is that certainly the one about flood risk has definitely been overcome. So then we have harm to the significance of the heritage asset. And members will probably be aware that the applicant undertook pre-application advice, and Historic England have commented on this and raised no objection to the development. And I don't often say this, but I, myself, our conservation officer, who unfortunately was poorly and couldn't be here today, and at officer level, we disagree with that. I think, and if I take you back to the photographs that we had here, so at the moment you have this very low level building, very, very rural setting to this rural village church. And this will effectively be rebuilt. You will see the side elevation, even though it's set into the slope. You will see, we go back to the, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. We go back to the elevational drawings. You will see this row of glazing, and this was a concern that Historic England had highlighted. And the design has been changed to increase the sort of eaves overhang of this and to introduce some louvre doors. But the parish council, I think, have correctly pointed out that the louvre doors, it's optional whether they are across the windows, and I would imagine for most of the time they wouldn't be, because you've got a lovely view and it allows in the daylight. It's the predominant face, outward facing, where a lot of the daylight is going to come from. And you will inevitably get, this is the front of the building, so you have the activity associated with that, with comings and goings, residential paraphernalia, kiddies' toys, swings, trampolines, all the sort of stuff that you get potentially with residential dwellings, family-sized homes. So that is going to, in my view, make a stark difference to the outlook of that very, very quiet rural church that looks out onto that rural setting, because it's not just the building, it's all of that residential curtilage that will come with it, that will be managed, potentially very prettily, but in a domestic way with planted beds, roses, etc. So I think there's twofold on that, is that the officer view is still that it does have an adverse impact on the setting of that Grade 1 listed church, an adverse impact on the setting of the conservation area, and also does not conserve or enhance the national landscape. So the officer view is that those reasons for refusal have not been overcome by the officer view, relatively modest changes to the window frontages of the development. The location hasn't changed. It's within the countryside, in a village that is not deemed to be a sustainable location for development, because if it was, it would be being proposed as a sustainable settlement in the emerging local plan, and it isn't. Occupiers will be reliant on use of the motor vehicle for most of their day-to-day needs. That hasn't changed since the previous refusal. And then we have the issue of the nutrient neutrality, which they have tried to overcome through the proposed use of the package treatment plant, but it does not accord with Environment Agency advice on the hierarchy for mains drainage, because they should be linking into the sewage. And to do that, they would need to submit a nutrient mitigation assessment, which we don't have, and they would need to propose some form of mitigation, which is very difficult to achieve. There's being quite free about that. So the officer recommendation for this is that it is refused for the 4 reasons summarised in the report. Yes, thank you very much. So over to you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to call Tamsin Froome, please, the agent. Thank you. You have 3 minutes. Can you switch your microphone on, the right hand switch? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Thank
you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, this application presents a high quality, sustainably designed home that has been carefully shaped to respect Stockland's landscape, heritage and community. The scheme restores the historic grain of the village by reinstating the historic building on site, enhancing biodiversity, and has received strong local support. Because of the site's proximity to the listed church, we consulted with Historic England early on. Using their feedback, we have ensured the historic farm is reinstated authentically, with all extensions discreetly concealed within the landscape to minimise impact on the church setting. Their most recent response is positive, and that is from Historic England, so we went right to the top to do that consultation early on. We've also addressed the Conservation Officer's comments, offering a proposed condition to secure appropriate roofing materials as requested, to ensure the semi-industrial character of the barn is properly maintained, and additionally provide tinted or low reflectivity glazing to address the glazing concerns. It must be noted that there is a 38-metre separation between the dwelling and the churchyard boundary, screened by 2.8-metre high hedges. This far exceeds typical privacy thresholds of 7 to 10 metres, and is not, so the 7 to 10 metre threshold is not indifferent from the other residential properties surrounding the churchyard, and I think that's really important to note, that the churchyard already has residential properties around it. The glazing would reinstate the barn's original semi-industrial character. As recommended in this bill, we suggest a planning condition requiring tinted or low reflectivity glass on the west elevation. We hope you agree that the design and layout would sit quietly within the rural context. We have ensured the protection of existing trees on site, plus the proposed new native tree planting, meadow hedgerows and a meadow roof to deliver biodiversity net gain, to be considered as an enhancement. On nutrient neutrality, the council's ecologist agrees that the proposal would be acceptable if we can put the foul water into a small on-site package treatment plant. The rules say we can use such a treatment plant if we are more than 30 metres away from the main sewer. A rational approach would be to measure the distance not to the arbitrary red line, but to the source of the sewage, i.e. the new dwelling. This approach has been tried and tested in case law and proven that we can consider the boundary to be taken from the edge of the property and not the edge of the spread line boundary. Taking this rational, sensible approach, the distance is well over 30 metres, so you are free to approve the proposed on-site package treatment plant, which means the scheme will be nutrient neutral, all as agreed with the East Devon District Council ecologist, with suggested condition agreed.
Can you wind up now, please? You're over time.
Okay. We do respectively ask for your support in this policy-compliant, well-designed, landscape-led, community-supported appraisal proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, questions? Councillor Barlow?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We talk about consistency. I just want to say, I know we're not allowed to do compare like for like, but on the last one, it was a brownfield site that you were arguing. We refused it, I know that. Sorry, two back. The one in Cranbrook, the outskirts of Cranbrook. We said, you were saying it was a brownfield site because there had been gardening on it before and because there was plants grown there for different, and there was an agricultural barn there. But now you're saying that agricultural sites aren't brownfield sites? So that's the first question. Can you just explain the difference between the two? Because growing plants is a horticultural, agricultural business. Anyway, also we've given weight to the local plan or not, and I'm just a little bit, as usual, confused because I know it suits when it suits to give weight, we seem to give weight, and when it doesn't suit to give weight, we say it doesn't have weight. So, you know, at what weight do we give to the local plan? Because on the last one in Otterton, we gave it weight that it's going to be in a built-up area boundary, whereas this one we're not giving it because it's not in the built-up area boundary, obviously, but we can when we want to. And Historic England, again, we're not allowed to criticise officers, quite rightly, because they are experts. One presumes Historic England is the expert in this matter, and are we criticising them? And if so, are we allowed to do that one layer above you, but not your layer? And I think that'll do for the time being, please.
So agricultural land, or agricultural buildings on agricultural land, it is very clear are not to be considered as brownfield sites for the test of, is this brownfield development in terms of planning purposes. The site this morning, I honestly would have to revert back to the case officers in terms of the exact nature of what went on there. I thought it was associated with the hotel and the way they'd used it, and it'd been used for parking of vehicles and a variety of different uses. I wasn't aware that it was related to agriculture. But the key thing is the application before us now, it's clearly an agricultural use, and I'm very confident that it cannot be considered a brownfield site for planning purposes on that basis.
Can I just ask, as a sawmills, why is that? That sounds semi-industrial to me.
Because its most recent use has been for agriculture. So the lawful use of the building at the present, as I understand it, is agricultural.
But then the previous one's just an agricultural store. It's not used for the hotel. I'm being pedantic, I suppose. Okay.
So the weight to given to the local plan, I'm not aware that there are any policies in the emerging local plan that would support this application. So I don't see that there is any relevance of considering the local plan in this instance. My only reference was that it is not, unlike the Otterton site, it is not proposed for Stockland to become designated as a sustainable village. That was the only relevance, and it was just making the point that moving forward, the view of the council is, the direction of travel is that Stockland remains to be considered as a unsustainable location, development in the countryside, strategy 7 situation. And Historic England, yes, I have to say, I would. They are the experts. I am not an expert. But I am guided by our conservation officers, and there are occasions where I just, I do disagree. I disagree. With respect, I disagree on this occasion that there will not be harm.
Yeah.
And that is supported by our conservation officer.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, just one other point, if I can, Chair. I just wanted to say, although we want to be consistent, obviously, in our decision, I would just like to point out last time it was split 50-50 and the previous chair had to make the final decision. It was that fine. And even Councillor Howe, who is the world expert, I believe, on planning, apart from yourselves, obviously, turned around and said there was 3 reasons they were turning this down. And he wanted to pass it, but thought that the balance wasn't quite there. But we have now ticked off at least 1, if not 2 of them with the thing. And I just wondered, so that members don't think that we are going to be making ourselves look stupid, should we not vote for this?
All I want is there's something that I don't understand, and maybe you could help me with. We're short of our 5-year housing land supply. Sometimes I see application, it says because of the 5-year land supply, we have to have it. In the other places, it is not applied. Why? I mean, we either have to be consistent or not consistent.
It is all about whether it is in a sustainable location. So where you have, for example, land adjacent to, maybe in the countryside, but immediately adjacent to a built-up area boundary, where they can easily access all the facilities of that town, village, then we may support something that is technically contrary to the local plan because it's outside of the built-up area boundary, but it's really accessible still to everything. Where we are in the countryside with the small villages with limited services, some of these villages, the council has looked at widely and say, yes, we think you've got enough facilities, you've got reasonably good public transport, you are a sustainable village capable of growth. Elsewhere, where they don't have that level of facilities, and this is a process that in creating the local plan has been looked at in detail to determine which are the sustainable villages and which are not. And if you don't, if the development itself cannot be deemed to be sustainable, the tilted balance does not apply. And furthermore, one of the key overarching elements of Strategy 7 is to reduce sporadic development in the countryside. One of the, to protect the countryside from, effectively people being able to just, here's a field, I'd like to build a house here. And we'd have no policies. We need to have a sensible, consistent, policy-led approach to where are the appropriate places for building houses and where are not. And in this case, Stockland has been deemed not to be a sustainable settlement. And that's what's going forward in the emerging local plan. And I don't think that the Development Management Committee is the committee to say that they disagree with that, because if you disagree with it, we should be putting a development boundary around it, and that should have happened at the local plan stage. So, it is all about sustainability.
Yes, thank you, Eileen. Being somewhat of a simple man, I'm going to ask a relatively simple question. I thought I heard the agents say that they were going to build in mitigation between the graveyard and the church and the proposed building. Did I get that right or not? Thank you.
There is some. Wendy, could we have the plans up, please? So, oh, sorry, I've gone the wrong way.
Is that a picture of stock?
What have I done? Oh, why is it?
This is how we deliver post in Stockland.
we go. Sorry, apologies. Let me just try and quickly get us to where we want to be. So there is a landscape plan here. No, the cars are parked here, although this is still, I mean, there is still an access here, and it will still be possible to get out onto the road, so there's still potential when it's, I mean, what they've got is they've got a safe route in times of flood, but looking at the layout here, I would say that there's prospect for this to be. You could put a condition to say that there should be no vehicles parked within the curtilage if you feel that's necessary, reasonable. And then the landscaping here, I mean, I think there isn't anything, and I think it's probably, if you look at the illustrative drawings that show the view, so this is just showing the hedge just overgrown. Well, this hedge is, I presume, because it's currently quite well manicured, is the ownership of the cemetery. So it's up to the churchyard, effectively, how high they grow that hedge. There isn't, I can't see any illustrative planting that shows anything growing up between. But what I did point out is, because of the topography, so there was comment about how far this is away, but this is on rising land. So that's the current height of the hedge. So you will see this dwelling, you will see the entire full frontage of that elevation. Even if this hedge were to grow another foot or two, you would still see the building quite clearly from the churchyard.
Could not the applicants build some sort of trees or hedge to mitigate against the views into the churchyard?
The church can't be required to do anything. They're not the applicants, and we can't, you could require an upgraded landscaping scheme to put some trees in. I mean, they will take quite some years to grow up, but you could put tree planting there.
Could I ask, I see the agent, can you help on this one, please? Can you go to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Just to clarify, there is a hedgerow on the applicant's side, so there are two hedgerows, one in the ownership of the applicant, which could be left to grow up, and then one on the church side. And I think in terms of tree planting, the applicants would, yeah, that's it, and perhaps add some more tree planting. And to mitigate your concern about them being immature trees, you can specify larger trees, so you know you've got that screening from the word go. Additionally, just to clarify, both of the applicants work locally in the village, one at the village school, the other is a farmer. So there wouldn't be no additional travel to work, so that they are going to live in it. It's a self-built dwelling.
Yeah, thank you. If the committee are minded to approve this, perhaps you'd agree a condition that more screening should be imposed?
And closing of the gate at the bottom, so there is no possibility of cars going through. So you said you put in access across the top to get over. Sorry, Chair, you said we put in access across the top to get over the flooding issue, which is tick one of the boxes. But one of the issues is you're saying is that it's going to put cars in front of the house, etc. So if that access is blocked at the bottom, then that solves that problem as well, doesn't it? If there was an issue.
Yes, it would be possible to put a condition saying that there should be no vehicular access at that point.
And trees or screening appropriate?
Well, yes, and you could.
Yeah, but yeah. Councillor Davey.
Wendy explained this very clearly, but it seems to me there's a catch-22 situation here. They're required to connect to main sewerage, but they can't do that because of the Axe mitigation strategy. So they put in a package treatment plant,
Yeah.
and then that doesn't fit with the drainage hierarchy. It seems a bit counterintuitive, and I thought I remembered a development in Axminster itself, which we approved for the package treatment plant, and that was quite a sizable development.
If I can speak, I've done 3 developments in Axminster, and the Environment Agency or South West Water have not wanted me to go into the main drains, and I've put in treatment plants. That's in the town centre. That's in just off the Old Child Road, right near the hospital. And East Devon approved that. The Environment Agency approved it. So I'm not saying Wendy's wrong, what she's saying, but she hasn't got all the facts.
I don't know the details. I don't know whether it was something that was post-planning, that South West Water had their reasons for not wanting to connect and requested the package treatment. In terms of the guidance... Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of the guidance is as I set it out earlier. And we have refused applications. We've had applications that have been withdrawn because they realised there was going to be no solution in the short term to this nutrient neutrality issue.
Sorry, Chair,
Thank you.
just on that point, if I
Yeah.
can. So the lady up there, who's obviously looked into it, says there is legal precedent from the building, not from the curtilage of the building or the package of the land. You've argued the other way. We have a solicitor here who's obviously an expert. I just wondered if he could spread any light as to which is correct.
I've got to admit that I was busy trying to do something else then, so could you put that question to me again, please?
Yeah, sorry. So the argument is at the present time to connect to a sewer, or to have permission to not connect to a sewer, you have to be further than 30 metres, 100 foot I think it is, away from it. The argument from the applicant is that it is from the actual cause of the sewage, i.e. the building you're putting in, whereas we're arguing it's from the curtilage of the building, i.e. the curtilage of the land. And there's obviously a big difference. One is within 30 metres, one is with outside 30 metres. So they're saying there's legal precedent on this. They've quoted the legal precedent. What's true, which is not?
I have absolutely no idea, is the answer to that, because obviously I'm not the all-knowing of everything to do with the law, I'm afraid. I'm guided by the officers. If officers have looked into this and they have the view that that's their interpretation, then I would have to do that unless you want to defer in order to be able to take legal advice on that, but it's not something I've been asked for before the actual meeting.
Thank you. I know that up to the boundary of the property within the curtilage, that is the responsibility of the householder. Outside that, it's South West Water. So it's a bit of a grey area, this one, isn't it? Because if it's 36, we don't know if it's 6 metres between the property that's to be built and the curtilage, do we?
So, could I come back?
Yeah.
If I can just say, regarding the one I was talking about, that had mains drainage. The house that I knocked down had mains drainage. The 3 that I built on in its place had treatment plants.
Yeah, but it's a distance.
Yeah, the distance to the drain was very short because the house already had it.
Yeah.
And it's in the town centre.
Yeah, we're talking about 36 metres.
Yeah,
here.
but yeah.
In 1422.
It was less than 36 metres.
In 1422 when you built it.
Vending.
So just to be clear, so the officer view, because Councillor Ragg was saying that it's grey, the officer view is that the advice, as we understand it, the guidance is clear, that it is if you're within 30 metres, if the site, and that word is very specifically used on the FDA1 form, if the site is within 30 metres of the mains drains, then you should seek to connect to that. And there needs to be, separately of all of this, you'd need an environmental permit anyway, if you're not connecting to the main sewer and you're within 30 metres, which they saying they grant those only in exceptional circumstances. But the 30 metres, our view, the officer view, is it is from the site boundary. For the reasons I said, because what is recognised is it can be problematic putting in extensive lengths of drainage through land that is not within your control. Once you get to your boundary, then it's not really that onerous to put in a longer length of pipe. So it's from the site boundary to the main drain. That's my interpretation of the guidance.
Steve?
Thank you very much, Chair. Wendy, you just said that they should seek to connect to the sewage, but if they can't, because of this nutrient issue, surely the other option is okay, is it?
If you look at the PPG on this, it does talk about, I should have had it open. I think one of the words, and I looked at it and I thought, because I think it says, unless, I probably should find the word, shouldn't I? Find the, it does something along the words of whether it's practical. And so arguably you could say, well, it isn't practical because you can't, because of the neutrality issue. However, that isn't the approach that that we've been taking, and it's not the approach that we understand the Environment Agency expect us to be taking. Because if that was the case, then there wouldn't be so much development that is being held up in the catchment because of the neutrality issue. And I think the Environment Agency are not wanting to see a proliferation of houses coming forward reliant on package treatments as a way of mitigating this issue. We are, as a council, as you know, looking at some strategies for this, creating nutrient habitat schemes where people can buy habitat credits and things to overcome this, because it is holding up development. But the approach that we as officers have been taking, that I'm aware of, is that where the mains, when it meets that, it's within that 30 metres, that we have refused applications. I mean, obviously, ultimately it's the decision for members, but that's the advice that I'm giving.
But again, that is on bigger. Sorry, Chair, through you, but that's on bigger housing estates. This is for the local plan, etc. We're putting in many houses, whereas this is one single individual house. It makes sense. You can't have hundreds of these because you need, as it explains, large areas for the soakaways, etc., so it works properly. And it isn't practical. If you've got 100 houses, you can put in larger ones, but they need massive amounts of area to actually get the soakaway gone. So, but it is suitable for one or two individual dwellings, like this, I would have said. And if it solves problems, and also just to say that to get in to the main sewer, at the nearest point to it, you have to go underneath a stream. Now, that isn't very practical. It is a very complicated thing to do, to go underneath the stream. So I would have said that it's, again, not practical because you've got to go underneath the stream to get to it. Otherwise, I'm quite sure they would just dig into it. It would be much easier to just plumb into it.
Well, the problem is that actually, like we've saying, it's the catch-22. We couldn't accept it because of the neutrality issue. But I mean, just by way of example, for example, there's an application refused at Hawkchurch in November 2025 for the conversion of a garage and studio into a dwelling, and that was refused solely because of the nutrient neutrality issue. I believe that package treatment had been ruled out as an option there. That's an example.
We can't
of a
compare
refusal.
like for like, obviously, on these things.
It's just giving an example in terms of the consistency, the approach that the council has been taking on this matter. But I recognise it is a very challenging issue.
Thank you. Any more questions from anyone? No, we got bogged down in that one somewhat. Right, debate then, members. Yeah, Ollie and then Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I remember Stockland because many years ago I taught guitar at the primary school there. It was an interesting journey, to say the least, made by car, obviously. So I don't have a problem with accepting that Stockland is an unsustainable settlement. It hasn't got a range of facilities. It hasn't got a bus route that I'm aware of. And that, to me, is the sticking point. This is development in the countryside. I think it's accepted that it is a new build. It is not a conversion. And so, unfortunately, I can't support it.
Councillor Brown.
Right. This application is to restore a 150-year-old sawmill barn, which shows up on the 1887 map, with an extension to form a dwelling. It meets NPPF paragraph 83, which reads, to promote sustainable development in rural areas, housing should be located where it will enhance and maintain the viability of rural communities. Planning policies should identify opportunities for village to grow and thrive, especially where it will support local services. Stockland has a highly regarded school where pupils from other villages attend. Also, under NPPF 84C, the development should reuse redundant and disused buildings and enhance its immediate setting. At present, East Devon only has a 2.975-year housing land supply. Therefore, we should use the tilted balance and look favourably at this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a correction there, it's not being restored, it's a complete new build. Councillor Barlow.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I voted for this last time, but as I said, it was split 50-50. It was very close. I think now that we have, even if we've only solved one, and I think the argument here is we might have solved two, if we allow or we don't allow it, they've still got to get a licence for the sewage treatment plant anyway. So that could be a condition, subject to them getting that sewage treatment plant. That solves two of the three things. The third thing, obviously, we can't get over because there is no doubt this is outside of the built area boundary. However, at that point, just like we just did with the Otterton one, which although it might be coming, it is not at the present time, it is outside, we are quite happy to say on that case that the identified harms, including conflict with countryside policies and minor landscape and transport impacts, which are all the same here, are considered limited. These are outweighed by the benefits of delivering an additional dwelling and contributing to local housing supply. We also heard on the last one where it's a bungalow, one single story, ideal for elderly people or people that want to stay in that village. My village I live in at the moment is dying because we don't have enough people in it. We don't have the balance of people, and that's because of second homes. And we are trying to get rid of them, but obviously this village probably doesn't have that problem. But again, it needs a balance of all the different sorts of homes. It needs new homes occasionally, and I think this is a prime position to do that. They've gone away, they've listened to our complaints and our problems with the flooding access and all the other bits and pieces that they have changed. There is no problem from Historic England. Why shouldn't we support it? The parish council was mainly for it. Both of the ward members are for it. I just think on this occasion, with the tilted balance that we use quite happily to batter through hundreds of houses, we can't allow one for a small village. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'm glad that I'm last because everything has been said. I don't want to ruin anything, but it seems to me that an awful lot of the problems here, including the glass and everything, can be sorted out by setting conditions. We can condition the whole thing. I just don't see what the difficulty is. And I think, is it the harm to the visual harm? I was taught that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You may think it is, I don't think it is. And I think that by putting screening around, additional screening, you're not going to be able to see, you're going to mitigate the visual harm to the thing. I've been to the church, I've looked at it. What we're doing, what the applicants are doing, are replacing an eyesore with something with a visual value. So I do not understand, to be honest with you, why officers are refusing this instead of very simply setting conditions on the build and approving it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I come back?
Yes, Mrs. Ormsby.
Getting a feel that might be the end of the debate. So I just wanted to come back on some of the key, one of the key things here, and that is that, there is a really distinct difference in my mind between this application and the Otterton site. The Otterton site, this council has determined that Otterton is a sustainable village.
Yeah.
And that's the direction of travel with that one. This council had the opportunity to consider Stockland as a sustainable village. It has not chosen to do so. And that's a very recent, so in the eyes of the council, this council, Stockland is not a sustainable location for development. We don't have any policies in the local plan to allow 1 or 2 extra houses in villages that are not identified as sustainable developments. Neighbourhood plans can bring forward housing within them. That has not happened within Stockland, and if Stockland felt the need to grow, that would be the opportunity and the way to go forward. This is contrary to the development plan. It is not a rebuild. It is a new build development on a greenfield site in the countryside. It is contrary to Strategy 7. It is not a sustainable location for development according to our current and our emerging local plans. It is clearly contrary to policy in that regard. And so that matter of principle, I feel weighs the Office of View very, very heavily. Some of the other aspects are more, the extent of harm on a heritage asset, there is more subjective interpretation. The harm on the national landscape, subjective interpretation. Is this somewhere that our local plan supports for development of new housing? The answer to that is clearly no. It is in clear conflict with the development plan in that regard.
Thank you. That is helpful. Just a moment, I'd like to say something. We've made our policies and we've got them now going, they've gone through Regulation 19, the next local plan, and we would be going against our own policies by approving this. So what's the point of making policy if you're not going to adhere to them? You get policies to protect the countryside. You start opening the floodgates, you do set a precedent. I know there's supposed to be no such thing in planning, but you would. And an appeal inspector in the future would look at this and say, you've allowed that one, so I have to agree to allow this appeal to succeed. So on another one that we might well refuse in the future. So we've got to be consistent. The old local plan, which is still functioning, says that it's unsustainable. As Mrs. Ormsby has said, she's been, and it is quite a strong policy. And the emerging local plan also says it's unsustainable. If it was sustainable, it would be in the local plan as a site for development. So think very carefully before you vote on this. I think Councillor Brown, yes.
Can I make a recommendation for approval, please?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Levine. And Councillor Barlow, you want to speak? Can you switch your microphone
sorry.
off?
I just wanted to point out, I asked, and I know that I'm giving the member time to get up some reasons to allow it.
I just wanted to point out that when I looked up what facilities are in the village, just so I check. So Stockland Victoria Village Hall, large hall, 150 people can go in it, sprung floor. Sports hall, including cricket pitches, tennis courts, children's play area. The King's Arms Inn, which is obviously licensed with food and gardening, garden seating and a village shop in it. Preschool, an academy and a large church. So, and I know it's not in our list, but I'm just saying there are facilities there. They're not maybe perfect, but they are. And we are talking about one house for a local people to want to live in it. I'm not saying that it isn't against our policy, but there are always, that's the whole point of us, to make exceptions to policies.
I'll get it right one day with this microphone. It complies with the NPPF's 84C and 83. Yeah, and overall, the items identified, including conflict with countryside policies and many things. Yeah, the last paragraph on your refusal.
No, that's another one.
Oh, was that one?
Yeah, you have to read it.
Right, read it out then, sorry.
Can I read it?
Yeah, please do.
Oh.
Overall, the identified harms, which we accept, they do not clarify, including conflict with countryside policies and minor landscape and transport impacts, are considered limited. These are outweighed by the benefits of delivering an additional dwelling and contributing to local housing supply, applying the NPPF tilted balance.
Thank you. Right, that's the reason.
You're looking to me, but I need Wendy to comment on those reasons.
Well, I suppose I would probably look at the reasons we refused it last time. And I recognise it's a balance. So the fact that it may not satisfy, everyone, you then put it into the balance. The reasons that you just gave, identified home with countryside policies, are outweighed by the delivery of a house. I think it needs to be more explicit, because you could use that argument for therefore any countryside location, that the fact that we have a 5-year land supply, we should be approving houses in the countryside, irrespective of whether it's sustainable development. So I think it probably needs to go a little bit further than that in terms of, so we refused it last time, for example, on the fact that it was in an unsustainable location where it was going to have undue reliance on the motor vehicle. So so what we need to be saying now, are you saying that actually what we refused it on last time is not correct, or you feel that it is, but there's other elements now that weigh in favour of it?
I'm not proposing this, obviously. However, if I was arguing to propose it, I would be saying that at the end of the day, saying that it is unsustainable, that is outweighed by the fact that we are providing a house. We have got over the other reasons we stopped, or some of the other reasons we stopped, which you're now going to start bringing out. Overall, the identified harms are outweighed by delivering a house, because we are so far behind in our process.
Again, I suppose I put it back to that would imply that any location in the countryside, we would be looking to support housing because our housing supply is so low. I think it needs to be more specific. What is it about this proposal in this location that means that it is, because we're accepting it's contrary to the development plan. So we can allow development contrary to the development plan where there are material considerations that indicate otherwise.
So the material considerations then, whether there was a building there, whether it was agricultural, or whether it was commercial, is an argument if you want to put that to it. I know you're not going to agree with me, but that is my opinion of it. I also believe that, again, with the we don't have an issue with flooding anymore. We've already said that. As long as we can put conditions in there to screen it from the church, even though Historic England don't think they have a problem with it, to keep our officers happy, that we always support if we possibly can. We would like to put mitigation in there to make sure that there is no possible viewing problems from the church. And also, again, as long as we can put a condition in there that they must be able to get the licence for the sewage treatment plant, because I think that was one of the things you said, they had to get a licence for that.
So we would need to condition that they cannot connect to the main sewer because there is no nutrient, it would be unlawful effectively for them to do that because of the nutrient neutrality.
So they would have to get the licence to be able to do it. If they couldn't get a licence, they couldn't build it, could they?
It would need to be a pre-commencement condition, yes, that they have the licence for the package treatment plant before they commence any development, because, as I said, it would not be possible for them to connect to the main sewer.
Can I just raise one quick point, please? I thought at the last refusal it was a 50-50 split and the chairs had the final decision. So this wasn't clear cut, was it, really, then?
The decision of the council is the decision of the council. It's not who voted for it.
No.
There was a decision made, and that is the council's decision.
Right. Sorry? No, it's been proposed and it's been seconded. And you've given the reasons. Are you satisfied with the reasons?
Yes.
Do you want
Satisfied.
to read them back, Wendy, and then everybody's clear?
So that in the view of members, this is previously developed land, that the heritage harm can be mitigated by landscaping, which can be controlled through condition, that the issue of nutrient neutrality and drainage can be overcome by a pre-commencement condition requiring the environmental permit for the package treatment permission treatment to be obtained, and that on balance the benefits of the scheme outweigh the conflict with the development plan, with the spatial strategy of the.
Identified harms including conflict with countryside policies, minor landscape transport effects are considered limited. These are outweighed by the benefits of delivering additional dwelling and contributing to the local housing supply. Applying the NPPF tilted balance, the proposal is therefore recommended for approval subject to appropriate conditions. Which you've just said with appropriate conditions. They're your words.
Not mine, not mine.
Your officers.
And obviously it would be subject to a fully detailed set of planning conditions, which would need to be agreed by with the ward member and chair in the usual way.
So the chair, vice chair, and ward member.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the chair, vice chair, and ward members.
And the obligations need to be put in place, Wendy?
Does that mean it will come to a chair's delegation?
Just conditions.
No, no.
No, okay.
Well,
Just those conditions.
No, just the conditions. Yeah.
Just the conditions.
right.
On that basis, then I think we're good to go.
Are you going to go to the vote? Are you going to? Can we then take a vote on that the application is approved?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Those against?
2.
Abstention? 1 abstention, and that is carried. Right, and that concludes the meeting. Thank you, members. Been quite intense at times, but you've stuck at it, and well, I'm